Alright, welcome back. Hello everyone. This is kind of a strange video that I'm making and also a strange timing. Uh, so it is it was like this article went out on October 12th, so it's almost a month now. So the story of it is quite strange. And by the way, this is going to be a free-flowing conversation. I don't really know, well, not a conversation, but a talk. And I don't know how long it is going to be, but this is going to be probably unedited, and it's a issue that I'm seeing, and I've faced it from like both sides of the table. We should understand in a while what I'm talking about, and also something that has been coming up a lot more recently. So I wrote down this article one morning, which is morning of October 12th, because I wasn't feeling like recording a video, and I hadn't written a blog in probably a year or so, and so I just decided to write this down and publish it. As I said, I am not editing this, so you will hear me cough slightly unwell, but that's fine. So the timing is quite strange, or maybe it's perfect, depending on how you look at things. So there have been a lot of layoffs, and market isn't looking great, and it's hard time for a lot of people, which I totally understand. And so this might seem like the strange time, or maybe the perfect time to address this situation. Um, and I want to also, of course, you see the title of this talk is why recruitment in ML is broken, and I want to. This is not going to be a vague talk. I'm not a vague person. I don't like vague topics. I want to address specific things, which means that I will miss some of them, but it is my opinion that you will get here. It is my opinion that these are the biggest problems in recruiting for ML roles, or in general AI, DL, whatever that is, data science. So let me just quickly set the scope for this. Now, some of you, excuse me, some of you might say that recruitment in tech in general is broken, whether it's for designer or product manager roles, PMs, or just software engineer, generalist roles, or developer roles, or whatever those roles might be. It's almost broken because there are no standard procedures. I might have some opinions there. I might not totally disagree, but also not agree with that. But I want to set the scope for. Oops, something just fell off. Anyway, so I want to set the scope to just ML related roles, because we can always get too deep in recruitment in general, and we are not here to change the world. Believe me, world is a far better place by itself than any of us could possibly make it. So I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to list some problems specifically in ML field, recruitment, hiring, things like that. Okay, so the story here is that I wrote this down, and I sat down and thought, okay, maybe I should record it. And one night I did, maybe like 2 weeks back. And I did this talk, probably it was 20 minutes, I don't know. And what happened was it sort of did not have the right kind of sound. The sound was really buggy. So then I said, okay, yeah, let's not do it anymore. And tonight I was just sitting. I thought maybe I should try that again. So I've tested my audio. It's working fine. But if something goes wrong after I record this video, I'm going to put this up anyway. So yeah, just don't expect too much. This is just a one take thing. All right, let's get started. I have wasted enough time already. So yeah, as I said, the scope is pretty limited to excuse me, ML roles, nothing else. So why am I making this video? It is because I have been on both sides of the table, right? I have been a recruiter. I have interviewed a lot of people for ML related roles, and I have interviewed in a lot of places, which is why we will take both the perspectives here. I will talk as a recruiter. I will also talk as a candidate applying for these companies, for these roles, and then because we should understand that there is most problematic situations or deadlocks, there is no villain in general. There's no villain. It's pretty much the situation that has been there for a while due to logistics overhead, and then not enough hindsight by some particular roles, right? So to start with, let's look at the recruiter's perspective, right? And here I'm starting with recruiter's perspective because you know it seems like the most common. But first of all, there are more interviewees than interviewers, and interviewers generally feel like recruiters have been unfair if they get rejected by a great after a great interview, or they don't get like a good enough response as to why they were rejected. So the general circumstance, I feel like, and this is my perspective, you have to take, and I'm pretty confident that it's accurate to a certain degree. If there is no malice involved, which means if the recruiter is not does not have any grudge against you, which in most cases is the case because generally interviewers the big companies also make sure that they are not interviewed by their relatives or direct family or things like that. So if there is no malice involved, the recruiter would always want to hire you. Right? The best case for his job or her job or their job is like to hire you, right? Because they get in many companies they're also like rewarded for hiring people, and hiring people takes resources. So the closer, the faster you close a candidate, the better it is. And so there's no reason why a specific person would want to like block you from hiring process unless there is some malice involved, which is highly unlikely, like highly unlikely. It's like the quote or the saying that I'll slightly modify, which goes like, if everyone is rejecting you, probably the problem is not with them. Okay, but there might be like you might be in a one-off situation where every person you've interviewed had a problem with you in the past. There has been history. I'm not saying that's not numerically probabilistically possible. It's just that you have to uh, realize that it's very highly likely. Okay, now the candidate's perspective. Um, so how can I talk about candidate's perspective? So just to give you a bit of a ground here, I'm currently working at Ultralytics with the creator of YOLO V5, which is probably the most popular deep learning based open source computer vision project. Before that, like it's a very small company. It's a uh, young company, and we are pre-seed, bootstrap, whatever. And before that, I was at Weights and Biases. I did some good work there that I'm proud of in open source world. I built some partnerships. I was a very early employee, and I mean, if you're from machine learning space, you would know Weights and Biases, and so I've seen like that company grow. And before that, I mean, before that company grew from when I joined 80 million to 1 billion valuation. When I left, I was probably like I was there when there were like less than 15-20 full-time people. So, and I have seen that. And before that, I was in a young startup in India. Also, I left it after like 6-7 months. I was not a full-time there, I was a consultant, but yeah, pretty much. So I have worked at 3 places that have done impactful work. And then I have interviewed at more than, I'm not going to count, but yeah, at least some of the biggest names in the machine learning industry. So like the biggest labs, the biggest open source companies, the biggest companies, right? So I know that how like the candidate perspective is to these things, right? Excuse me. So once again, I would like to set this tone by saying that I have been lucky to be selected for interviews. My resume got selected or got forwarded. And let me reaffirm this. If you are someone who is struggling a little bit, just believe me when I say I'm not sugarcoating things and I'm not good at that, so I won't do it. Yes, recruitment is a lot of luck. You know, you might come across cases where the one person is really more qualified than the other person, but they get rejected. It is the case and it happens. So don't believe anyone. I mean, you're free to believe because you should not believe me even. But I will tell you this, that everyone who says that grinding is the only way to get to where you want, or for these roles to get hired, they are not right. They might be wrong, they might not know it, but I'm telling you, a lot of people don't have that hindsight of being both sides on the table. I have been there. And I'm telling you, it comes down to really, it's luck. A lot of luck. Of course, it's other things, but there is a significant chunk of, if you draw a pie chart where the different factors involved in getting you the role you want, luck is a significant chunk, right? It's not the only significant chunk, but it's one of the significant chunks. So I've been on both sides. I've done some decent. I've done great in some interviews. Excuse me, horribly, terribly in others. I wanted to let you know this because I've worked at some largest open source projects, right? But I have like absolutely did terrible on interviews. Simplest questions. So it happens. Brain fade is real, right? Well, it's for me. It is real for me. Some people might be really experts, but it's like when you get stuck in this situation. I've heard people talk about it. It seems like it only happens to you. It doesn't happen to you only. It's a phenomenon, right? So a candidate perspective. Maybe I just took too long. Excuse me. In this particular section, I don't know how long this is going to be. I'm sorry, but yeah, this is really important for me to talk about. And I think this is really important for anyone who's kind of planning to get into this career and who does not have the resources or time to get into an Ivy League, start over again, preparing for that and things like that. So that's why I'm taking my time. It's really important for me. I'm not doing this one for views exactly. So right. So in this section, what I want to tell you is the candidate's perspective is always that the interview process has been unfair and they did not know what they were doing. Which in some cases is true. New companies don't know what they're doing. And they would hire someone without the right kinds of background check, without the right kind of tests. And they would reject really promising candidates. I have seen this happen. It's frustrating when there is no process. It's terrible that you lose good talent, but it happens. So, like before I recruited people, or in a sense like tried to recruit people, it felt like this process has been unfair or the interviewer has been unfair. But in hindsight, I know that it was not them being unfair. It was the whole thing. Like even they would have felt that it was unfair. The system was designed in this way, and we'll get to that just a moment. So the bigger picture here is that some of the aspects of machine learning recruitment are broken, and there can be many depending on who you are and how you look at things. But I will look at some of the most important ones that I feel like if these are solved, rest of the things would fall into place like dominoes. So the first one that I would like to point out is blurred lines between research and engineering. Excuse me. So when you think of ML research or engineering, it's really difficult to tell them apart if not by title. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're an engineer, or if you let's say if you want to be a machine learning engineer, and if you want to be a machine learning researcher, the path that you have to follow is has both paths have too many overlaps, like too many overlaps. So a good researcher can definitely fill the shoes of a good engineer, and you might think, oh, there's a catch. The good researcher, a good engineer might not be able to fill the gap of a researcher. Well, if you just take away the research literature experience, they probably can, which is the main issue here. It's a very controversial take, I understand that, but if you look at the requirements, if you look at the things, and if you mark my words carefully, what I said is, if you take away the research literature experience, which is like the only thing that is separating a research engineer to a researcher, right? Just like they have not read a lot of papers, they don't know how to write a research paper. But that is not anything specific to ML world. It's like general researchy stuff that is taught to you in maybe grad school if you take a research project, or in your PhDs. So if you are an engineer, you know some math, right? You don't know all the math, but you know some math. It's like linear algebra. You have to know the vectorization, because that will speed up like your code base practically. That is really practical. And then You have to know what a particular function is doing. So you have to understand the objective functions, like cost functions, many others. Similarly, if you're a researcher, you need to familiarize yourself with tools that are mostly engineering-like, which is like experimentation, benchmarking. Make sure your code is readable, because in machine learning, open source is all the rage. So you have to open source your code at some point. So if you look at these things, right, these evidences, these are not things that I'm making up. These are evidences. There is such an overlap. But now let's look at the general computer science roles. A software engineer and a computer science researcher have two different lives after undergrad. After undergrad, they have two different lives. After undergrad, an engineer will learn about stacks, not the stacks and queue stacks. I'm talking about tech stacks. You know, they will learn more about the development cycle. They will learn more about project development and product development, management, and then move the ranks of, you know, in the product world. In computer science, in research, it's very different. It's like computational theory, and your depending on your sub area of research, there's a lot less overlap. So the problem here is not the blurred lines per se, but the result that it causes in the recruitment world. Recruiters are not sure exactly what they're looking for, which is the main problem, right? Whether you are looking for an ML researcher with some background in software engineering, which is fine, right? It's fine. You can expect that. But are you looking for that? Are you looking for a software engineer with some knowledge of research? And this makes all the difference in the world, right? This makes all the difference. If you think about it, do I want a researcher who could write who could write good code, or do you like a software engineer who can sort of read through a research literature and maybe figure out some things looking at the code, right? Maybe he can or she can take ideas from that literature and say, all right, we have this kind of implementation in our code base. Maybe it's time to use this particular text, or get inspired from this particular text and try these ideas on our code base, on our system. This makes the difference. If you think about it, you would assign them different tasks if you're a large company, like sufficiently large. So I'm assuming here that the data that we have, the data points where these are companies, are sufficiently large to have both roles, right? That's why we can that is the only way that we can hypothetically analyze this conflict, right? Which is what happens. How is the overlap between ML research and ML engineering roles, right? All right. So the solution here is what? Decide who you're looking for and keep that in mind during the recruitment process. Right? Decide on paper first whether I'm looking for an engineer with some research background, like who can understand research. It's like this is like a bonus point. Or am I looking for a researcher first who can write good code, right? And believe me, both those skills can be picked up, but you have to understand who you're looking for, right? The problem that I've seen is, well, that problem is like my next point, so let's not come to that. But yeah, so you have to decide that and keep that in mind while interviewing the person. Whenever you have a conflict whether I should hire this person or not, go back to that question: whether this person fits this role or not, right? That should be your criteria. And also the communication is necessary. That you have to communicate this person. Maybe not. It's not required if your job listings are great. If you say that I'm looking for a researcher with good coding experience or with good software engineering principles, right? That is it. You don't need anything else. Okay, do it. Half of the problems will be solved, but the next half is this: lack of clarity on take-home assignment. This is the new rage, right? This is like, if I'm a cool company, I don't believe in those whiteboards, DSA algorithmic questions, right? We're the cool kids of the block. New startups, new founders, new recruiters. Like, we are not like other recruiters. We will give you extra money if you are if you're lowballing yourself. All right, like this is great, but take home assignments, of course, they're a step forward. They're not for there are some problems in ML related take home assignments. Okay. Let's see what is specific to machine learning or data science. In machine learning, there is no right or wrong answers. There are, but not really. Like there's a degree to which your answer is right or wrong. But that degree will change depending on the hardware that you have, depending on the data that you have. We cannot test data collection, data labeling, data cleaning skills for, let's say, a research engineer job. Maybe you can, but generally you won't because time is important. Take home assignments take some time. Someone might be in a job. You have to think of all of these things. It's important to be empathetic towards people you're trying to hire. So, if there's a take home assignment, it's bound to be open ended. This is going to cause confusion on both sides. It isn't always the case, but sometimes the problem is just, people don't do the due diligence, just go to the existing templates, and they don't really know what they're looking for, which is our first point. When you write the assignment, maybe you don't even know what you're looking for. Just write assignment for all tests in general coding skills, general machine learning skills. You don't even know. Right? You don't even know. So what happens is a person attempts that, they solve this, and then they send it to you. Now you're shocked. What should I look at? Because obviously there is no correct or incorrect answer. So then you start judging the person by the style of their coding, which is fine if they were told about this, right? It is fine if you look at a strange way of coding, or maybe a good way of coding that sort of aligns with your idea of how things should be implemented. Then maybe you start looking at how they did in the, let's say it was a deep learning exercise, how they did in the modeling section. How many parameters did they use? Did the model that they chose or they built was too big for a case? Was it too small? Was it too simple? Too complex? Did they take into account any dataset features? Well, you can judge the candidate on all of these things, but the big question is, if you told the candidate it was an open-ended exercise, did you tell them how open exactly? What would they be judged on? Because it can mean anything. Open-ended can mean anything, and candidates don't really know that. So what I'm getting at is, you have to understand, and candidate also has to understand. This has to be communicated to them exactly what they should focus on in these exercises. Do you want to improve the performance, readability, formatting, testing, or like just run experiments to form a study as a researcher, not as a software engineer? All of these things, right? Maybe they can do both, but as I said, it is an ideal world scenario, and we don't live in an ideal world. We don't have all the time in the world. We have deadlines, both candidates and the interviewers. And so focus on specifics. Focus on what you want rather than what would be nice to have. Solution here is define how open-ended exactly the problem statement is. And it's best to decide beforehand what areas you will judge the candidates and clearly communicate this to them. Knowing how they're going to be judged, the candidate can easily devote more effort to the required domains and sort of just get away with bare minimum effort needed on the other areas, right? They will not worry about formatting. They will not worry about repeating themselves in the code base. They will not worry about these things. If you tell them, okay, we only care to improve the accuracy of this particular model or this particular metric, right? They will just keep on working on the research side. They will do ablation studies. So, you have to have that. Now, the lack of standardization. This is just a continuation of previous topic. So, if you've seen general software engineering roles, DSA is kind of a standard process. Now, although it is nowadays, as I said, cool kids the block, they don't really use it that much, but I do see some value in it, right? For example, just think of you're an undergrad, you're interviewing at 10, 15 different places, and every one of those interviews were based on the tech stack that company uses. And if there's a large company, there are many organizations, and the tech stack also changes from organization to organization in a particular company. Think of how many things, how many technologies, how many documentations you would have to read just for preparing for entry level, first job after college, right? So DSA has some value because that way you standardize it. We said, okay, we are testing you for this particular problem solving skill, and we don't care about the stack that you've been using, right? You can come in. Once you're in, you can spend some time, maybe a week or two, to understand the code base, to understand what tools we use, and let's go from there. Now, this is the problem with ML roles. There is no standard process for evaluation in ML roles. Usually the problem is evaluation metric. The method decided internally by the teams. Again, this cannot come from experience. I am telling you this by experience. No one knows, and no one is experienced enough to call themselves as ML recruiter, right? Because the field itself is less than 10 years old. Remember AlexNet that brought all of the fame to deep learning, right? That's when machine learning also grew, and then AI field was sort of like everyone wanted to be an AI researcher. Even today, that's the case, but still, that is like less than 10 years old. It's 2022. I think it was 2014 or maybe 2012. So it's like almost 10, but less than 10 years old. So there's no standard process yet because it's relatively new. Think of the general software engineering rules, which has been around for as long as computers have been around. So it's kind of standardized. So at this point, the solution is to address the need of the standardization, the process. So candidates can relax a little by prepping for interviews instead of reading everything that they can on such a vast topic. And this topic spans across multiple disciplines. Will I be tested on my linear algebra skills, or my calculus skills, my optimization skills, or just my probability knowledge? Because believe me, there's so many things that you cannot remember. Like I cannot remember all the distributions that there are in the world, right? Maybe normal distribution, that's fine. Maybe a few more, but you don't always come across these things. So this is my final piece, or like three advices that I would have for both the sides. Mostly the recruiter's side, but yeah, this is not to be seen as only the recruiter's side, because you can ask this information early on in the interview process to avoid unnecessary problems. Because the thing is, if the process is not standardized, right? For the same domain, you're appearing at three different companies, and one is trying to test your understanding in research papers. Second wants you to build a distributed system, and third wants you to test on your DSA knowledge. And as I mentioned here, this is not an exaggeration. This has happened to me once, and well, I could not, like, in one of those interviews, like, I was so messed up, I could not even print a list of, like, I could not print the contents of a Python generator. Like, you just have to convert them to list. It's just one line, one word. I could not do that. It happened. I'm not blaming it on anyone, but it's like, I know, like, this happens a lot. So, which is why I said, like, you might make such silly mistakes, because it was something that I used daily, in my job, before that, and even today. But it just happens because you're too stressed, you're reading everything that you can, there's lack of clarity, it's just jumbled, everything is just, fed into your brain, forced into your brain, whatever that is. But this is not an ideal scenario. And so the bottom line here is that it's a relatively new field. We cannot compare it with the decades old programming roles that have been standardized. But looking at the rate at which companies are adopting these new technologies is crucial to improve the recruitment process, right? That's my main objective here. It is crucial to improve the recruitment process. Thing is, all of this is problems. Right? What is the solution? What can I do to sort of get to where I want to be? I'm a firm believer in practice what you preach. So if I'm not going to give you an advice that I know has not worked for me, or I have yet to try it. So I'm not going to say that build in public, or kind of, learn in public. I have seen that work for people, but I'm not sure. I cannot testify to that. But it's not everyone's cup of tea to post things online and really maintain that consistency. Everyone has a private life. Not everyone wants the cloud or all of that. But I think that's the most common advice you'll get. Another one is like do open source contributions, but that's also a whole new game, you know. You cannot just go and start doing open source contribution. It's easy for me because I know people in the industry at this point. I know people who would just want to work with me, or would not, like, would respond to my issues. But that is, yeah, that happens over time. If I had to start today, what I would do? That's the big question. So out of building in public or sort of posting things online, or you know, like, I personally, no one likes to see how does backpropagation work, an article on that, right? I'm not well, I'm not sure. I would say I'm pretty sure that no one would like to see it, right? At least that's me. So if you're writing something, maybe it has to be interesting. But my general advice would be, if you're starting in open source, I do know open source, so I can advise you there. Uh, do whatever you want for like posting on social media and stuff. But I cannot tell you that. But for open source, I can definitely tell you that it's something that you can do. And again, not those like month of open source, whatever that is called, like the core month where everyone makes bullshit PRs to get great repositories, like one line change. I mean, if you're targeting that, just don't do it. Right? Just don't do it. It does not mean that if you have a lot of GitHub reputation, someone will hire you. They will still test you, and then you'll make a fool out of yourself. That, oh, I just changed the spelling of this. It's fine if you did, but if that should not be the only thing, right? I would personally, not be impressed if you were just collecting, the green dots on GitHub. But But that said, contributing in open source is a really different game. Right? It's not something that you go on a repository, see, oh, that's something I can fix, and you build a PR. That's not a way to do it. I've been meaning to make a video on three-step process that I would suggest, but I haven't had. Really, I'm not really interested in the cloud. I don't really put out videos for views, but I think YouTube is a saner platform than Twitter. So I use Twitter less. I scroll Twitter a lot, but I post less. And YouTube is like an archive of my videos. So yeah, it's that's why I'm posting it here. So do contribute in open source if you can. The path is not to go to every other repo every other day and try to contribute. Uh, One of the advice that I would give if I made the video of how to start open source is that first find something that you're interested in. Try to be a power user of that tool, right? Try to be a power user. Only power users can find feature that would be nice to have. So then you will sort of find a feature that you would like to have. So you build something, right? You build something there, and then you realize, okay, this could be useful for the other people in the community. Then you make a PR, and maybe by building that feature, you find a bug, you raise a bug report. That again is a contribution, and then you volunteer to solve that bug, and that again is a contribution. You build an example, that again is a contribution. If you find an error during the example, a bug during building the example, that's a contribution. It's a cycle, but first step is that you have to be involved. You have to be interested. You have to devote some time. You cannot just go to this particular project today and try to start finding bugs. That's not how it's going to work. That's working your way backwards. It's not good, right? So this is the only advice that I will give you. Right? This is the only advice, and again, you're free to take it or leave it. But yeah, I hope everyone is doing okay. If you're watching it, it's a difficult time. Definitely, some of us are really uh, lucky to have us, not stable, but at least steady jobs or like gigs that kind of are a good balance between like what we want to do in life. And you know it's more about it's never about you or your team if you are laid off, or are struggling to find a gig. It's mostly about luck. Some people get lucky earlier, some people get lucky after a while in these things. And believe me when I say I have been on both sides, and I understand. So stay strong. Try to just think about yourself. Don't pay heed to unnecessary bullshit that people say. uh, and really, I'm not trying to be a preacher here, but I can relate to all of this very very clearly. I wanted to, as a high school student in India, I wanted to go to an Ivy League, but I couldn't, so I had to carve out my own path. I realized early on that I had to do things my way, and it's difficult. Believe me, it's difficult. It's difficult not to do what standard. It's difficult to spend last 2 years of high school just grinding, and it takes a toll on you. Definitely, it does. And work your way through college and just have a specific goal, try to achieve something. It's difficult, and um, but this is what trying to say. It's it's possible, and first step towards achieving anything is believing that it's possible. All right, that's a great thing that I said. So let's end this video on this particular note, and well, I hope everyone is okay. I hope everyone's chilling from time to time, and I hope to see, or I hope to reach most of you next time. Right. Bye.